Hi, my name is Andrew Berry and welcome to At the Bench. And we're going to be looking at a pair of tweezers today. I'm really making a very short 5-minute film about these particular type of tweezers. I get asked questions all the time. What is the best way for safely putting together shanks and heads? Heads, settings, bezels upon shanks. Because when you try and hold the shank, you try and hold the bezel, try and get it in position, you get it just right, you put the heat onto it, and because, there we go, the head falls off. So what is the best way to put these two pieces together? Well, we've got these, I call them head and shank tweezers because they hold the head and the shank together. Other manufacturers call them all different things. I've even seen them called Swiss tweezers. There's never any explanation on how these particular types of tweezers work or what you should do with them. And when you see them for the first time, they look rather odd. You think, well, how the heck are these tweezers supposed to work? But they are an absolute lifesaver when it comes to holding, positioning the shanks and the settings together. So, as I said, 5-minute film, really quick. Let me show you what we do. I'm going to be putting together a nice rose gold knife-edged solid shank and a simple 4-claw double gallery setting. This is for a job for our shop. So you need to think now in advance. If I solder the shank and the head together, am I going to be able to get into those areas where I've soldered to be able to clean it successfully? Think ahead. What I have done, I have buffed and I have polished the shoulders right where we're going to be soldering because it is going to be easier for me to clean up afterwards. So I've got rid of all the marks, any file marks, any casting marks, any mold lines that go down the edges of the shank because it's going to make my life far easier. So we cleaned it, we polished it, we put it through the ultrasonic. We need to make sure that the areas that we're going to solder on are nice and clean. Make sure there's no grease, make sure there's no polish. We're going to just use a file just to go over those areas, making sure they're nice and clean. Likewise with our setting as well, because we've touched it, I really want to make sure that those areas are nice and clean. So let's use some emery paper just to come in and clean those areas. We're going to use a bit of borax as our flux for this. And before we assemble these together, I'm just going to put some borax onto the areas where I've polished and also the areas where we are going to solder. Keeps those areas nice and clean. Right, let's put these components together using our head and shank tweezers. We need to turn the setting upside down. This pad down here is going to be the pad that holds our setting. Okay, so that's going to go in that position down there. We're going to be doing the ring upside down initially like this. The shank's going to come in, that's going to go in upside down as well. Okay, there's a groove in this end of the tweezer that the shank nicely sits in. This is a slide that comes up that just will hold everything together. As you can see, I just simply slid that up and it's actually holding the setting and the shank together. Not quite in the right position yet. Now we can come along and move everything and make sure that that setting is going nicely right the way through. Imagine, draw an imaginary line running from the center of that setting right the way through an imaginary center of our ring. Look at the ring this way. Make sure now that everything lines up. Make sure the setting is exactly lined up with the shank. Make sure the paddle, I call this the paddle, holding the setting isn't over this one way and the setting is slightly skew-if. Make sure everything is in line this way. Making sure, looking down on the top if you possibly can as well, making sure that everything looks good. Making sure that the shank at the bottom here is midway between the bottom of the setting, and likewise on here where the top of the shank comes up to the setting, make sure that is midway, and we can really move all this round so it is exactly as we want it. Just gently move these ends of the crossing, the lock here, move it up a little bit just so that it holds it. You don't want to squash it, because as soon as you start to heat up this area here, there's a likelihood that this shank is going to lose a bit of springiness, and it may squash down and you'll lose the position on everything that you've got here. I'm going to add a little bit more flux now into the areas where we're going to solder. The advantage with this is that we don't have to go holding onto the shank, holding onto that setting. Everything is in place exactly as we've got it by here. And once you're happy, we can come along and solder. We've got 4 solder joints to do on this particular type of setting. We've got 1 either side of the base and then 1 on each shoulder. We can hold this together, no problem at all, while we do those 4 joints. We're using 9-carat red, so I've got some 9-carat red solder, 4 small little pallions. So this is the whole point of these tweezers, is to be able to do this, is to hold the setting. And it doesn't have to be the simple 4 claw we've got here. It could be a cluster, it could be a bezel, it can be anything at all, but it holds everything together perfectly, ready for us to solder. The tweezers are going to take some heat, okay? They're going to sap some of the heat away from us. So we need to heat them up first of all. And also by doing that, it's going to make sure that our borax is going to dry out. As you can see it bubbling up quite nicely here. Then we can bring our torch a little bit nearer and we can start to concentrate on soldering the setting to the shank. Beautiful, so simple. If you want to, you can leave it all together. I'm going to do that because I can be sure that I can get the next solder joint looking right. Now we can heat this up, knowing that all our solder joints are going to stay together. Lovely. And also on the other side, but what I'm going to do now is literally take those off and we can solder the other side. We've got 3 solder joints done. Super. Turn it over, bring the solder through. In fact, it has come through. It's oxidized like this because it's red gold. But there we go. A setting put into place, straight, aligned perfectly. As you can see, lovely job. Easy, simple. It's a lovely, easy positioning tool. It makes sure that all your settings are perfectly aligned. You can solder it without having to worry about you shaking or the head moving or anything like that. I'm going to put that into the acid now, get rid of all these oxides, then we can carry on with the job. There we go, a very quick, easy film on how to use the head and shank tweezers. My name's Andrew Berry for At The Bench. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.